Hello. Welcome to the Great Stories Podcast. I am Ryan Weber, the creator of all things great stories, and the host of the show today. What you have found is a podcast where I sit across the table from another human being that maybe we all know, maybe no one knows, maybe I just met, doesn't matter. But we learn all about their life, we hear their story, and we just hear, most importantly, just how they have come to know Christ and what it's looked like in the context of their real life to follow a real creator. These aren't packaged, these aren't rehearsed or scripted, there's no editing. I barely even talk to people ahead of time about what we're going to talk about. We just sit down and we just have a genuine conversation. The goal of this thing is that you, the listener, will be sitting there listening to the conversation that we're having as if you're sitting on the third side of a table. And it's my hope that through sharing in this way in someone else's journey with their faith, that if you are a believer, that you'd be encouraged, that maybe you would relate to elements of their story, that you would fall in love with the creator of the universe even more through hearing about what he's done in someone else's life. And if you don't know the creator, if you don't know Christ, that, wow, what a powerful way for you to actually find out what he's like, than to see the results of what he does in real people's lives. I think that, man, our generation is starving for real communication, and these conversations have been so encouraging to me, and it's my prayer that they're as encouraging to you as they are to us. So if you hear the show, if you like what you hear, if you want this thing to keep going, there's a couple ways you can support the show. Just really quickly, the first way is to go on to patreon.com and search for the full name, The Great Stories Podcast. And you can throw a few bucks down this way. I'm trying to upgrade some hardware. I got a third microphone over here now. Trying to get this thing out on different platforms. There's some cash that has to be spent to make this thing work. I'm not trying to get rich. I definitely don't want to turn a profit that I don't plan on putting back into this thing. So if you want to throw a few bucks down the way, I could do more of these episodes more often. Pretty cool. The second way you can support the show is by sharing it. If you hear something that's encouraging to you, I guarantee you there's a lot of other people out there who would be just as encouraged by it. So you can share it on Facebook or Instagram, or just send texts like, hey, check this out, send an episode out. That's awesome. The third way you can support the show is by coming on it. Please come on the show. For every person that sits across this table, there's 1,000 other ones just like you that would be encouraged to hear about your journey with Christ. And I want to have you on. Everybody's interesting. Don't tell yourself you're not. You are, right? If you're interesting enough for Christ to die for you, you're certainly interesting enough to talk about it. So come on the show. That's all. That's the business. We did it. So today I've got a great gal on here. Her name's Katie Yeung, and she's a newlywed to a fella named Matt Yeung. I've known them for a couple years now. Went to their wedding just about 8 months ago, we found out. Super cool gal. Really great perspective. Grew up in the church. Spent her time in a little bit of rebellion. Jumped around. Had some just very interesting experiences with a few different churches before landing, of course, at Resonate Church, where I know them from. We talked about, gosh, the education system, dating as teenagers, some church doctrine stuff. We covered all kinds of stuff. So just hold on tight, because we're going to get there. And I hope you're encouraged by this. I hope you enjoy listening to it as much as we enjoyed recording it. Here we go. Katie, what does a normal Monday look like?
Ooh, a normal Monday.
Yeah.
I wake up at 6. Well, see, this is the thing. I set my alarm for 6 o'clock, and I really wake up. I really get out of bed at 6:30, and I walk really slowly to the bathroom.
Old lady.
I get ready, yeah, like an old lady, and I go downstairs, make my coffee, and then I go to work, drive to work, get to school. I try to get there like an hour before school starts.
Okay.
So that I have enough time to like prep all my lessons and whatnot. And then the kids come in at 8:10. Oh, actually, no. On Mondays, I get them at 9 o'clock because they have science. They go to science class.
Ooh.
So I have Monday morning prep, which is actually the best prep that you can have because
It's beginning of the week.
it's the beginning of the week.
Nice.
And it's perfect. So, yeah, I do like all my stuff. I have yard duty.
Oh.
Yard duty is the worst. Oh my goodness. So I have to
Yard duty.
wave cars in the morning, like in the car line. I have to
gosh.
and parents are literally crazy. Like they honk at each other in the line because they want to, I don't know.
Because they're busy.
Because they're busy and, they got places to go, people to see and whatnot. And so, yeah, they're crazy. So.
What grade do you teach?
6th grade.
6, that's right.
Yeah.
So you're doing, oh gosh.
11 and 12-year-olds.
That's so awkward.
I know. They're so funny,
Do you feel bad for them sometimes?
Well, it's so funny. So we just came back from science camp, like last Friday.
Okay, yeah.
And then this morning, there are like 3 different boys that all of a sudden have a different voice.
Good morning.
Yeah, it's like deeper. It's so hilarious. And I don't really want to say anything because I'm like, oh, they're just like going through it,
Yeah.
They're like
They don't
growing
even know.
up, living their life.
Trying to figure out who they are.
Exactly.
Why things smell bad when they didn't before.
Know. Well, yeah, that's the other thing is that in 6th grade, they just really start to smell and they don't understand. They don't know the concept of deodorant.
Is that part of your job is to like break the news to them? Like, hey,
Kinda. Well,
listen here, Johnny.
Well, my mentor told me, like, you should kind of do it just, like, really lightheartedly, just be like, hey, guys, like, deodorant is a thing.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, and then she's like, oh, well, if it really gets, to be an issue, then you should, like, kind of talk to the student, like, individually. Because I know who the students are. Like, they walk by.
Everyone knows who that is.
Yeah, no, everybody knows except for them. Which is so
gosh.
funny, so. Yeah, but it's a good age.
We had a couple middle schoolers with just legendary foot odor.
Oh, no.
And you...
It has to be really bad for you to smell their feet. Like,
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Like, well, because you go to, like, with church camps and stuff, especially like an outdoor ed, if they did that, everyone knows whose foot is funk.
Right.
Because it's like, you've heard of trench foot, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I swear, the kid's never been to war, never been in a trench, never worn boots, but
Yeah.
oh my gosh. People who know. Like, if someone's listening, they're like, I know which kid that is. Like, they know.
Man, that's
It's crazy.
terrible.
What an awkward time.
I know.
I feel like I didn't really stink as a middle schooler, but
Oh, that's good.
maybe I was that kid that just didn't know that he stunk.
Maybe you're still that kid.
Shoot.
Just kidding.
Yeah. No, I'm pretty aware when I'm funky.
Yeah.
I stay away from people.
Yeah.
I fist bump instead of hug.
Yeah. Well, my mom gave me like deodorant as like a gift. So,
Oh, that's a message. Hey, just thought you might want this.
Yeah. Well, I knew too, because you got like hair starting to grow there, and it's like, oh, it's not okay.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
6th grade.
Yeah, but
Oh my
they're a
gosh.
fun bunch. They're funny.
What school district is this?
Fremont.
Fremont. Okay, that's
Yeah.
right. I remember.
Yeah.
How long have you been a teacher?
Oh, this is my first year teaching.
That's right.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Well, this is like my own classroom. Yeah. I did student teach, though, in a 6th grade classroom at Patterson and first at another school. Yeah.
Right on. Yeah, I think I told you I was a para-education substitute at Patterson
nice.
for a while. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
One of those
Nice.
weird... I don't know how that happened, but yeah, I
You
did
like?
that.
Did you help in like the resource or the special ed room?
Yeah,
or?
with the autistic kids.
Okay. Got
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, the grade schoolers.
That's so hard. I have one student with autism in my class.
Are they trying to do the what do they call it?
Mainstreaming.
Mainstreaming with your school?
Yeah, I think in middle school. So right now, 6th is still considered elementary.
Okay.
But next year in middle school, I think they want to try to mainstream it. But my student, he's like pretty high functioning, so he can handle like being with other students most of the time.
Does he have like a
he'll-
one-on-one with them or?
No, he doesn't.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's really high
Yeah,
functioning.
he's really high functioning. Yeah. I mean, he has his little like fits sometimes, but
Yeah.
he's a good kid and yeah.
How fun.
Yeah.
Well, so we're sitting here in my little house.
Yeah.
You guys just signed the legendary door.
I know. It's
Uh,
amazing.
When I say you guys, your hubby Matt, sitting right here,
Living his best life, probably playing word games on his phone.
big old smile. Angry Bird. Is that still a thing?
Word games.
Word games. Yeah.
Okay.
Like Ruzzle, or I don't know what game it is,
I
but the
can't
one where
do
you have
word.
to like make words by swiping
No.
as fast as you can.
That feels too much like school.
Yeah.
I'm not
I
gonna
like
do
word
that.
games. They're the only games I'm kind of good at. A little.
I do. The only game that I play is Clash Royale. That's the only game.
What is that?
You don't know what you would teach middle school, and you don't know what Clash Royale. Katie,
No.
okay.
I'm uneducated.
You-
Please educate
I'm not gonna
me.
tell you. No, you gotta ask. Pick any boy tomorrow. Just
What is
ask him.
it? Clash Royale.
What's Clash Royale? And they're gonna say,
I know, they're gonna laugh at me. Well, they're teaching me all these like trendy things now, like what a Visco girl is, and
I don't know.
oh
What is
yeah,
that?
see exactly.
Tell me that.
So
Please
there's
tell-
this app. There's like this photo editing app.
Okay.
It's called Visco, VSCO, and it used to just be. I mean, it is still used just for photo editing.
Okay.
But now a whole persona has been created from this app, and a Visco girl is a girl who like wears scrunchies and like carries a hydro flask and like wears tie-dye shirts and like stuff like
Visco
that.
girl. Wow.
Yeah, and then also they taught me about TikTok
Oh yeah,
and the renegade dance.
that's a thing.
Yeah.
Yep.
I told
Okay.
them to teach me, but they didn't teach me. I'm waiting for them to. So
I
we'll
always
see.
try to ask our the high schoolers at church to teach me things.
Oh yeah.
What I like to do is get something that like they don't think I should, because apparently I'm old now. I didn't realize that, but
no.
yeah, 37 is ancient for them. So when I tell them, oh yeah, I got a TikTok, they're like, what?
Oh my god.
You have a
That's
TikTok?
so funny. Well, they think
like,
that I'm old too. Like,
You're grown up. We're all
well,
old.
it's funny. During science camp, the high school kids were counselors. And they were like, oh my gosh, you're 25. You look like you're like 16. Like, I hate my life. But it's fine. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, hey, so I've been doing this for a little while now. It's been, I think, 3 months since I've done an interview.
Oh, wow.
It's been so busy.
Oh, my
It's
goodness.
It's been just like, since the church moved, really.
Yeah.
Like, it's just been one thing after another.
You just kind of had to take a break.
I had to take a break.
Okay.
But so, yeah, you're kind of breaking it back
I
in.
know. I love it.
Congratulations.
Yes.
And yeah, Matt, I think he's listened to everything, and he told me a long time ago. He's like, oh, you got to talk to Katie.
Oh my gosh, I
think
know.
she's got a great, she could tell you so many things. And so when I was like, all right, I'm going to start scheduling people again. I
Yeah.
was like, you think she still wants to do it? So-
Well, it's so funny because I was like reluctant. I was like, oh, I don't
Yeah.
have anything to say. I think that's kind of like the temptation is to think like, oh, I don't have a
Yeah.
story. I don't have anything to say.
Yep.
And so I was like so reluctant. And then you asked again. Okay, like for a while I was like, oh, I'm off the hook. I don't gotta go. I don't gotta record this thing.
I've got a list, actually.
Yeah.
So,
Oh man. Yeah. So
I
then,
know.
and then he asked me, and then the same day I was like, okay. When he asked me again, I was like, oh, like I'll think about it. And that same day we saw you at the gym.
Oh, that's
And
right.
I was like, oh
Yeah.
my gosh, this could be a sign from God. So I should.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's so funny.
Yeah.
But I've never done anything like this before, but
That's okay. You know what? I haven't interviewed really anybody but like one or two people that have.
oh, okay, yeah. I mean, it's normal other than the fact that I have a mic and a
Yeah.
headset.
You'll forget they're there.
Yeah,
It's funny.
it's fine.
And the cool thing is that everyone thinks, oh, I don't have a story, or
Yeah.
I'm not that interesting.
Yeah.
But like it's like I told you, there's thousands of people who are like you, exactly you.
Mm-hmm.
School teachers, whatever, similar stories. There's
Yeah.
elements of your life that anybody listening could be like, oh wow, she's just like
right,
me.
and they could relate to it. And
So maybe
yeah.
it's not interesting to like 98% of humans.
Right.
But for those two, like this girl, she's saying everything that I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Like that's you. It's
right.
perfect.
Yeah.
Everyone's
sure.
interesting to someone.
I guess so.
Yeah, you're interesting to him.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
He says I'm interesting, so that's
yeah.
why he married me. So
Yeah,
cool.
he thought you were all right.
I guess.
How long you guys been married? You're coming up on a year soon enough, right?
No, well, like 8 months
8
next month. 8 months in March. It'll be 8 months in March.
Wow.
Yeah, actually, it kind of went by fast. Not that I say 8 months. That sounds closer to a year than not a year.
Does it feel new, or
Kind of. It still feels a little new.
what's one thing you've learned
Yeah.
about him that you weren't expecting?
I
nothing-
don't know if I wasn't expecting this.
Nothing
but
creepy though, like weird. I don't.
Like he just stares at me while I sleep. Just kidding.
You wake up and he's breathing.
Oh gosh. Well, he does leave his socks everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
Like, literally everywhere. Like, you will know the first place that he went to when he came home by
Find
where
a
his
sock.
socks are. Yeah.
Wow.
Like, oh, the first place he went to was on that chair at the dining table because his socks are right there.
I feel like if you ever got kidnapped, it'd be easy to find you.
Totally.
Just follow the socks.
Exactly. Follow the socks. Yeah. But, you know, I just like, I've just dealt with it. I just pick them up now. I used to, you know, take the time and be like, can you please pick your socks up? But it just takes too much time.
Wow.
And it just causes an unnecessary conversation. And I'm just like, whatever, I just pick them up and put
Really?
them in the hamper. Yeah.
Wow.
Or sometimes I just leave them there.
Oh, dang. That's like veteran wife stuff right there.
I know.
Normally
8
you have to.
months going strong.
I know. Normally you got to fight about it for 5 years before you know, like, that's it.
Totally.
If I find one more sock,
I know.
you're out of here.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is you have to like pick your battles, right? You have to decide like what's really important and what's not.
Yeah.
It's not really important. If I just pick it up, I'm happy.
That's true.
And he's happy. And then, well, the other issue is, well, he leaves his clothes everywhere.
Right.
And I don't know if they're clean or not clean. So I just put them in the hamper, but then he'll be like, oh, they were still clean. And I'll be like, well.
Well,
your
what I've
fault.
found is that guys' definition of clean might be different than
That's true.
yours.
I just kind of smell it a little.
Okay.
And
you
if
give
it's
it,
got a stench, I'm like, bye. In the
sniff
laundry
test.
basket. Yeah.
you know, they say you can get 4 days out of a good pair of underwear.
Oh, God.
'Cause you,
He just started inside out. And
yeah, inside, outside, front, and back. That's it.
no. The worst.
Okay, well, maybe
Oh,
that
man.
I'm still single, so that probably
Okay.
has something
Yeah,
to do
it'll
with it.
change.
Darn
I
it.
hope.
Maybe I should change that before.
Yeah.
I'll put that on the list of
Yeah.
projects to do.
Self-improvement.
Yeah.
For sure.
I'll put that on my dating profile.
Okay. Yes.
I change my undergarments daily.
Daily. Yeah.
Daily. At least daily.
At least daily. Exactly.
So, Katie, take
Perfect.
me.
Yes.
Let me learn some more about you.
Yeah.
So take me back and like, let's just rewind the tape on you.
Okay.
Start with like where were you born? Like
Okay.
how did you come to exist as you are?
I was born in Fremont, so I was here my whole life, pretty much.
Native.
Yeah, native. I didn't appreciate it as much though back then, but I think I appreciate it a lot more now. But my parents are, my mom's Filipino, my dad's Indian.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was born into kind of multicultural family.
So
which
no
is
one
pretty
knows what you
cool.
are then, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're like, what are you? Well, when I was young, I looked more Filipino. Now that I'm older, people are like, oh, I only see Indian. Well, it really depends on your background, actually. Like, if people have grown up around more Indian people, then they would see the Indian in me. If they've been around more Filipino people, they'll see the Filipino in me. Yeah.
How did your parents like get together? Because
Yeah,
that's
so
such an odd
I know.
like combo.
It is.
You know?
They met through this like pen pal thing, like this international like letter writing program thing.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Like,
And then
wasn't there a movie like that
probably.
This
I
is
would not
like-
doubt it.
with a mailbox and
Oh yeah. I don't know.
that's it. Lake House.
Oh,
that's the
I
one
don't
where they
know.
put the letter in the mail and then
Oh,
it traveled
yes.
through time
Yes,
and they fell in
yes,
love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Anyway,
in this
sorry.
case, it's the same time.
Okay,
So,
same time.
Yeah, same time.
Wow.
Yeah. So my dad was in the U.S. already, and then
Okay.
my mom was in the Philippines still.
Okay.
Yeah. And then
Wow.
they wrote letters to each other, and then they wrote letters for like 2 years. And they didn't meet each other face to face until like either their wedding day or a few days before.
Get out of here.
I know.
What?
Yeah, it's crazy.
That's the most romantic
I know,
stinking
isn't
thing
it
ever.
cute?
Wow.
And my mom's like, yeah, I still have the letters. I'm like, can I
Oh
see
my
them?
gosh.
I know. She keeps them in some box. I don't know. But
That's awesome.
yeah, so yeah. And then they had my brother. My brother and I are 8 years apart, almost
Oh.
8 years apart.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he was actually the surprise. I was the planned one. Yeah.
So you
yeah.
were a nanny then when you
Yeah.
were younger.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so grew up in Fremont my whole life. I went to a private Christian school, preschool, all the way through 8th grade, which is how Matt and I met each other.
Which school is that?
Christian Community School. Well, now it's called Kimber Hills Academy.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, the church or the
That's
one that's
so
connected to Fremont Community Church.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's Angela Yee. She's
Yes.
like one of the first people, I guess.
know.
Yeah.
Well, that's how I know Angela Yee is through Fremont Community Church.
So you knew her when she was there?
Yeah,
Okay.
I knew her before. So she knew me when I was like a young little child.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, I bet that makes her feel so old. Don't tell her that.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's not going to like that.
Sorry, Angela, if you're listening.
She will.
But yeah, so went there, preschool to 8th grade, private Christian school.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I think I was like pretty sheltered, I would say, because when I went into high school, it was a public school, Washington.
Okay.
Yeah, and then like it was just culture shock because
What is this?
at Christian Community School, we were a class of 28 people.
Oh,
like
gosh.
that's it.
Yeah.
Everybody knew each other. Everybody knew each other's business. All the
For
teachers
years.
knew each other. Yes.
Yeah, since kindergarten. So
Yeah.
kindergarten to
Yeah.
8th grade.
Preschool. Some of us preschool.
Preschool to 8th grade.
Yeah.
Wow. And then
Yeah.
the 12
And then-
of you go off into the
Yeah.
the brave world.
Yeah, and then we just go, and then I went to Washington, and then I meet all these different people who are just like, well, it's so funny. The first day of school, all the kids are like cussing, and I'm like, Mom, all these kids are cussing. I can't handle this.
Oh, no.
It's like, Mom, why did you make me go here? Why? So it's just so funny. I just
Sinful
think back.
people.
I know. It's like, why? My ears. I can't handle it. But yeah, it was so funny. But I mean, I had a good high school experience, I think. I was like pretty involved, played volleyball, did like performing arts club, was in theater,
Okay.
did like student government, stuff like that.
Right on.
Yeah,
So
it was fun.
you were raised in the church. then.
Yeah, I was.
So
Mhm.
that is it. Your parents are even more confusing now.
Yeah, I
So-
know. Well, okay, yeah. So it's funny. So when my mom and dad were writing to each other, my mom
Okay.
told him like, "Hey, like if you're not a Christian, like I'm not gonna marry you." And my dad was like, "All right." So then he became Christian.
Really? Just
Yeah,
like that?
I know. Isn't that funny?
Whoa. Okay.
So my mom became a Christian in college because, in the Philippines, people are typically Catholic.
Yeah. Right.
But her sister became a Christian, and so then her sister shared the gospel with my mom, and then my mom became a Christian in college.
Okay.
Yeah, and then yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And then they
That is
started
cool.
going to Fremont Community Church in Fremont when they got married. So
The church
Yeah.
is still there.
is.
I think they're remodeling the school or something.
I think
There's something going on there.
Yeah.
They plugged up the hallways.
I know. Yeah. Well, they're like renting it out right now to another like charter school.
Oh.
Yeah, I think they had plans to maybe like start the school again, but
Yeah.
I don't know
Or
exactly.
they're like taking a couple years off. They're
yeah,
gonna
but my
take a-
parents still attend the church.
Oh, they still go there.
Yeah, they've been there for so long.
So how far did you stick with the FC? Like, take me. Okay, so you went to Washington High School.
Yes.
Volleyball.
Yeah.
Theater.
Yeah, so I went to Fremont Community Church like
Yeah.
growing up my whole life. So
Okay.
I started getting involved with like the youth ministry like in middle school. So I technically like accepted Christ technically, if I get real technical,
Yeah.
I accepted Christ when I was like 6 years old.
Okay.
Like I remember like I think it was Mrs. Blake. It was like during chapel one day because in private school and private Christian school you have chapel every Wednesday. And then they come up and they like share the gospel and they're like, if you want to accept Jesus into your heart, then you just have to pray this prayer.
That's how I say it on Sundays, just like that.
Exactly. And so then I went home. So I was a very shy kid. So
Okay.
like usually they would like invite the little kids to like come up and like they would pray, like the teachers would pray with the kids.
Right.
But I was so shy. So I was like, no, I'm going to go home and do it by myself.
So you waited. I'll pray when I get home.
Yeah.
That's
I was like,
cute.
I'm going to do it when I get home. And so I
that's
go
funny.
and I sit on the edge of my parents' bed and I'm like, dear God, like I believe in you, Jesus. Please come into my heart. And that's it.
Wow.
And so, yeah, that's 6 years old. And I was like, okay, well, that's it. and then once I started kind of going to Sunday school and all that, I like got baptized in 4th grade. I like took this baptism class and whatnot and memorized these verses. And I think I had like a very like basic understanding of who Jesus was. Like I understood sin and the implications of that and all that.
Yeah.
I think I understood that. But I didn't like really take it seriously until like high school, I would say. So that's when I started getting involved with youth ministry. So I started volunteering as a high schooler for middle school.
Yeah.
And started, getting to teach others about Jesus. And when you're like the one teaching it, you're kind of learning too, you know.
Best way to learn something is to teach it.
Exactly, yeah. And then I was like kind of being discipled by my youth pastors at the time, and they like really poured into me. Yeah, and then I stayed with FCC all the way until like college when I went to San Jose State.
Wow.
Yeah.
Let's go back to grade school for a second.
Yeah.
So we just had a big round of baptisms at our church, and
it's very emotional.
We dunked the most people ever.
I know, it's
like
crazy.
50 people, I think. 54, I think was the total.
Yeah.
The water was so dirty.
Oh.
And
was it like murky?
It looked like it looked like a Starbucks blonde roast by then. Yeah.
No.
It was bad. Yeah, I don't know what people were doing. Must have been jumping jacks or something before they got in there. But what was I gonna say? Darn it! Oh, we had a class beforehand for the kids, and I honestly am sort of on the fence, kind of conflicted about it, because I think there are kids who like they genuinely get the gospel, they understand. Okay, God is real, Jesus is real, sin needs to be punished. Jesus came, he took the punishment, so I don't have to take it. Right. Because of that, I'm perfect to him and I go to heaven. Yeah. Like they get that whole thing. Right. And they say, yeah, I want to get baptized. Yeah. And gosh, it's so hard to like question that. Right. But I'm in a strange position where I have to. It's weird. Totally. I mean, they're like kids, right? Yeah. They're like unsure and right. Yeah. Because what I've found is that like, you know, kids' parents or me, like really like if you're influential in a kid's life, I can get them to say anything. Right. And I can get them to agree everything's real. You know, I could get them to agree that unicorns are real, right. And that I've got one in my backyard. Yeah, and if you feed it carrots, it like craps rainbows. Like I could teach them anything I want. True. And so that's always like the real tricky thing is to like, how do I know if this is legit? Right. Yeah. You know, because what we don't want is for a kid to get baptized, and then in high school they're like, I don't know if that was real. Right. Like maybe I should get baptized again. Right. And then it's just like a cycle kind of. And then in college they do it again. Yeah. And so it's like, we're just trying to we just want to get one good one. Yeah. And so I encourage parents like, hey, if you feel like you have to convince them or if they're just telling you what you want to hear, right. Don't do it. Right. Yeah. Don't do it. Wait. Let them. I know people that waited till they're 15, 16, high school, grew up in the church. It's fine. Take your time. Yeah. I think it's an important decision. Yeah. And for like a kid to be like, if they're really, really young, that could be kind of iffy and we had question it. A couple middle schoolers do it yesterday. One freshman in high school. I think that's pretty good. Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. What was it for you? Because you say kind of in high school that you started to really get it. What do you think it was? Because you said you're being mentored and the youth pastors, but what like, I don't know if you can even put words to this, but what was it that really like settled in on you? Like how did I think it was just like my youth pastors like example of love and how they were just so like sacrificial. I like in high school I like dated this guy and it went south. It's like a really long story, but they were like there for me through the whole thing, even though I had sinned and done wrong things. They like really loved me and pursued me and like made sure I knew it was because Jesus had done that for them, you know. So yeah, I think it was just their example pretty much. Yeah. So there's a handful of high schoolers that listen to this. Oh. If you hey guys. If you were to give them some like from your distant memory way back when you were young. Yeah. I know. The whole dating in high school thing comes up all the time. Oh yeah. All the time. Yes. And I think we have to be careful because a lot of time the message they hear is don't date. Yeah. But like, what's your kind of take on that? I'm curious because you work with sixth graders and you had this experience. I don't know how much you want to elaborate. But. I mean, it's hard because so you always have to kind of go back to the Bible, right? And the Bible
doesn't, like, dating's not a thing, you know?
It's not in there.
Right,
Nope.
exactly. So it's hard to, like, put parameters around something that's not, like, black and white stated in the Bible, right?
Right.
But I think if you go from, like, the perspective of, like, okay, you're dating, I mean, in my opinion, should be a tool, like, for marriage, right? We date, like, to get married. So just thinking of it from that perspective, I mean, if you were to ask me if I think a 6th grader should date, I would definitely say no. Because there are so many issues, right, that come up when you're, like, dating, like, not even just dating young, but just dating, like, guarding your heart, right? Like, making sure that you're, like, honoring God, honoring your body, honoring each other, right? Like, if you think, like, you can do those things, right, then, I mean... And, I mean, I think it also comes down to, like, being in community. Like, I don't think you should date isolated. Like, I wouldn't... I mean, high school is, like, interesting. I dated in high school. For my own experience, I think I wouldn't do that. Like, for myself, I wouldn't date in high school. But, I mean, I've heard stories of people dating in high school, and they end up getting married, which is
Happily
cool.
ever. That's rare. So
rare. But
rare.
it's, like, rare, right?
Yeah.
But, and I'm not going to sit here and say, like, oh, don't date in high school. But I think if you're going to, like, I mean, honor your parents, right? If you have parents in your life, right, that care about those things, right? Honor your parents. And if their wishes are that you don't, I mean, you should honor that. But date in community is what I would say.
I like that.
Have people keeping you accountable.
Right.
Don't, like, isolate yourself. Don't, like, push your friends away. And yeah, make sure that you have the right heart going into it. Like, don't just date just for fun.
Right.
Yeah.
Well said.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah, it seems like there's, like, this weird panic in high schoolers. That's like, oh my gosh, I'm not lovable unless someone loves me. And then they just, like, I got to do whatever I got to do to get this thing buttoned down.
Right. And I think that was my issue for sure. And that's why I struggled so much, like, throughout my life with just dating and love and all that, because I was trying to, like, gain my worth from other people.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't healthy. Like, I wanted people to, like, I mean, I still struggle with this. Like, I want people to like me, right? But I wanted to, like, feel, like, deeply loved and deeply known. Yeah. And I think people want to feel that from other people, but you really can only get that from Jesus, right? Amen. So, yeah, it's hard.
Yeah, I don't think you're never really over it completely.
Right. Yeah,
like, there's always a part of you that's, like, constantly measuring yourself based on everybody else. What do they think? What do I do? I wish I was more like him or her. Right. That comparison thing just eats them up.
Totally.
It's hard.
It's so hard. Yeah, for sure.
So take us into college then. College. You said San Jose State. Woo.
Spartans. Woo.
Nice.
Just kidding. I have no school spirit, but
I drove by their stadium today.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
We have a machinery yard because their stadium's in a weird spot.
Yeah, it's kind of like random.
Just in the industrial area. Yeah,
exactly.
It's weird.
Yeah. So senior year, I can't remember. I applied to Azusa Pacific, actually.
Okay.
But my parents were like, no, we want you to stay close by. And I was like, all right. So my brother went to San Jose State, so I think they kind of expected me to also go to San Jose State. And I was like, okay, that's fine. You know, it's a state school. I mean, even now, especially now, like, people kind of in high school, like, judge you for what school you go to.
Oh,
you know, what college you go to.
That's
whatever,
huge,
whatever.
yeah,
And
for
so,
sure.
you know, people are going to all these UCs and, like, Ivy Leagues and whatever. And I was like, well, it's fine. You know, and nowadays I tell, like, college students or high school students, like, it really doesn't matter where you go as long as you just, you know, get your degree if that's what you want to do. So, yeah.
Well, and get a degree you're going to use.
Right.
They go into this massive debt.
I know.
Crazy for some, like, degree, and then it's like,
I know.
What are you going to do with that?
Exactly.
Oh, yeah, I got a film studies degree.
I know. I know.
No.
Well, see, that's the thing is these days, like, our, like, millennial generation, like, it's all about following your heart and, like, doing what, like, makes you feel happy, which I don't, like, I'm not totally against that. Like, I think you should do something you like.
Yeah.
But, like, we live in this day and age where kids know that YouTubers can make millions of dollars a year.
Yes.
And they want to be a YouTuber because that's their passion and they want to do it and whatever.
Right. They want to be PewDiePie.
PewDiePie, yeah. Oh, man. But anyway.
Is he still a thing?
I think so.
PewDiePie?
My kids talk about him.
Okay.
Yeah, so
I
don't know.
He got a bad rap a couple years ago for some things.
Probably.
But, yeah.
Those YouTubers. But yeah. So I was like, I'm fine with going there. You know, I'm going to discover like what I want to do and whatnot.
Yeah. What'd you study?
I studied child development, actually.
All right.
And well, when I got admitted, I was originally going to do, my parents wanted me to do occupational therapy. But then when I got admitted, they had cut the undergrad program. And so there was only a master's. So you had to go through undergrad and do any major and then apply to go to the OT program. I was like, okay. And then they suggested getting like some sort of health science major or whatever. So then I was like, okay, a lot of people are doing child development because I know I'll want to work with kids eventually.
Yeah.
And so I did that. And then as I was in the major, a lot of my peers were like going into teaching. And then everyone was saying like, oh yeah, this is like a really good time to go into teaching, blah, blah, blah. Because there's like a teacher shortage, which is there really? I don't know. That's another story. But yeah. So then
in Fremont?
I know. Well,
there's a space shortage.
Yeah.
School shortage. Teacher shortage.
Yeah. Everything
Common sense shortage.
I know, exactly. But yeah, so I got my degree in child and adolescent development. And then I got my master's later and got my teaching credential too from San Jose State as well.
All from there.
Yeah.
Did you live at home through that time?
I didn't. I actually lived in the dorms. So my freshman year, I lived in the dorms, and that was fun.
What year would that have been? Just curious.
2000. So I graduated high school in 12. So it was 12 to 13 was my freshman year of college.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Wow, that I feel like, okay. Never mind. I was gonna say something.
It seems like a long time ago though. Now that it's 2020. Because when I used to think of 2012, I'd be like, oh, that was like 3 years ago, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And I was like 8 years ago.
2012.
I know.
So here's a little mind freak for you.
Yes.
My 20-year high school graduation, reunion.
Yes.
Is in June.
No way.
Yeah. That's stupid.
Are you gonna go?
I haven't even thought about it till just now.
Okay.
Dang it.
Wait, where did you go to high school?
Sarah High School in San Mateo.
Oh, okay.
Class of 2000.
Okay.
Wow.
Nice.
I don't like this anymore. All right, you guys can go. I'm going to turn the lights off and listen to some depressing music or something.
Man. Yeah.
Shoot.
Oh, gosh. College. But yeah, I lived in the dorm, so that was kind of fun.
Yeah.
It was hard, though, because I had gone into college, like, wanting to look for, like, a fellowship.
Okay.
And I had this friend, and I kept asking her, like, let's go find a ministry. And I never wanted to go alone. You know, I don't want to do things alone. But she always, like, wasn't able to make it somehow. And so I ended up just, like, never going. I know. Yeah. And then I had some friends that lived on the same floor as me. They weren't Christians. They were kind of into the whole, like, party scene and that sort of thing.
Right. That's what I was going to comment on.
Yeah, and so
I worked on an ambulance in San Jose in like 08, 9, and 10.
Okay.
And so we spent a lot of nights.
Oh, yeah, I bet.
Fishing drunk kids out of the dorms, probably right where you were at. Yeah. I know those dorms.
That's what people look forward to, right?
That's the college experience.
It is.
Right? Yes. Let's go. Hey, Mom and Dad, pay for me to go get.
Exactly. That's what they want to do. Like, it's like finally they have some freedom and they can like go out and do whatever they want.
Gosh.
But yeah, so then I wasn't going to ministry. I like kind of stopped going to FCC. I was going like maybe every other week or like once a month or like not as consistently. And so I didn't really have community. And then these friends, like they always wanted to go out and they would ask me like, hey, do you like come out with us? But I was like, nah, guys, like it's just not my thing.
Yeah.
And they would keep asking me and then slowly they kind of stopped just asking. And I was like, oh, you know, like I just want to like have friends, you know. I think like at that age especially, like you just want friends, you just want people to like hang out with, you want people to like call your people, right? And I wasn't getting that. And so slowly I started like getting into that scene and like drinking, having sex, like the whole like party scene. And it just like wasn't healthy. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. And so randomly, so this was going on for like a few months maybe. And then, but the funny thing was I was still going to church. I was still like going.
It's the classic raised in church, but exploded in college kind of thing, right?
Exactly.
This is what all the parents are like, no.
Yeah. And so then, I was still going to church, still like putting on a face, everything is okay. And at that point, I think back and I'm like, oh, why did I think this? I even thought like, okay, God, like, I know that these things are wrong, but I know that you'll, like, forgive me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was totally, like, that, like, Paul moment where Paul's like, don't take advantage of the grace that Jesus gives us, blah, 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 right?
Yeah.
But I was totally doing that. And I totally knew I was doing it. But it's, like, that sinful part of you that just overtakes you, Like, you just can't get away from it. Like,
interesting.
Yeah. And so I was like, God, like, I'm just gonna, this is like, just let me do this. I've been a good kid my whole life, like I've done the things, I've lived the life, yeah. And so I was like, just for this time, like, let me do this. And then, yeah, so still going to church. And then randomly, this random day, I, like, the night before had, like, just gone to a party and all this stuff. And then I was going to church the next day. And then, like, randomly, like, this song, I was listening to K-Love. Shout out to K-Love.
Yeah.
And the song comes on, and it just convicted me. And then, okay, this is so funny, but it randomly starts raining, okay? And it was just the mood. And the song comes on, and I just felt like God saying, like, in my heart, like, Katie, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? And I was just crying, it's just like this whole emotional moment.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I just felt like God was just like kind of bringing me back to himself in that moment. And so then, I went to church. I told my pastor about it, and he prayed for me.
Okay, this didn't happen at church.
I was like driving to church.
Wow.
Yeah. But God, I mean, like, yeah.
God just like reached into the car and just went, hey.
I know, yeah.
I'm still here. Interesting.
I know.
Wow.
Exactly. And it was just like a question that I felt like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Because I just like felt the hypocrisy, of like going out and sinning and then going to church acting like everything's okay and that I'm fine and like, oh, Jesus will forgive me,
This reminds me of the story of the first sin in the garden. Remember, so they eat the thing, and then they're hiding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And hiding, exactly.
Jesus is walking in the garden, and he says, "Where are you?"
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
That's like the question, like, what are you doing?
Yeah, exactly.
It's not like he needs to know. Like,
right,
hey,
he already knows.
I'm just checking in. What are you doing?
Yeah, it's more so the question is for you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
exactly. So.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay. So you told your pastor about what's up.
And then we just worked through those things. It was like, I think that was it was the summer before my sophomore year of college.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I had planned to live with the girls, the friends that I'd made that year. And I just felt like God was saying, like,
maybe not.
Yeah, maybe not. Maybe not a good idea.
Right.
And so I was like, okay, like, if I'm really going to go all in with this, like, I need to just kind of, like, let go of those friendships that I know aren't going to, like, serve me, especially with the state that I'm in. Not to say that I can't have friends that are not Christian, right? That's a totally different thing.
Yeah.
But just for myself in that season, I felt like I couldn't have that temptation there, right? And so I told them, I was like, hey, guys, like, I'm kind of going through some stuff. I think that it'd be best if I just lived somewhere else. And at that point, I, like, didn't know who or where or where I was going to, like, live or anything. I mean, like, I could have lived with my parents, but they were, like, at that point, they were already not renting my room, but my uncle was living in my room, and, yeah. But anyway.
There's a time.
Yeah.
You gotta go. We gotta get out. Yeah.
And so, the year, my freshman year, I was part of this Filipino club, Akbayan, And I knew this girl.
What's it called?
Akbayan. It means like friendship.
You have to say it with a more legit. Like,
Akbayan.
there you go. Yes.
And
it's wrong if I do it.
I know.
But
But it's fine if I do it, of course. But yeah, so I had known of a Christian girl there.
Okay.
I didn't really know her. I just knew of her. And I was like, oh, maybe she has like a network of like Christian friends that she could like kind of hook me up with, that are looking for like a roommate. Then I messaged her on Facebook. And then I was like, hey, I know you don't know me, but... And then I just told her the situation. And then I didn't think she was going to respond, actually, because I don't know. And like 3 minutes later, she was like, hey, actually, I need a roommate. And I was like, oh, shoot.
Akbayan. Perfect.
Yeah. And then I felt like God like really provided for me in that moment,
Yeah.
And I was like, cool. And so then through her, I started going to this campus ministry called Ignite.
Okay.
Yeah. It's like a...
Every other ministry in the world is named Ignite.
I know,
you know
right?
that?
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ignite.
I know. Yeah,
That's
so I
cool.
started going there.
All right.
And I think it was good. Yeah. It was good for my season, I think. So
Yeah.
I've had two very opposite church experiences. This one was I was part of a well, I guess 3 now. But this church was a charismatic church.
Okay.
So it was like speaking in tongues, prophesying, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, it was an interesting experience.
Did you get in on that
I did.
sauce?
I did. Okay,
Okay.
so it was very interesting. I don't know if it, like, to this day, I can't say if it was real or not. Yeah. Like, I don't know.
Interesting.
It's like a big topic,
It is.
Yeah.
I don't think we need to plumb the depths of that, but
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, like God says, like, yeah, there's spiritual gifts, and I give them. Speaking in tongues,
Right.
is one of them. Interpreting them is another one. So we can't say these things aren't real.
Right, exactly, yeah.
But I
there's
think-
issues of like, oh, does God still do that today?
Right.
Was that just for that time? Yeah. So
I think he does,
yeah,
but I think it's far less frequent, often public or
Right.
dramatic
right,
as it's made to be.
yeah.
And I for sure don't think it's one of those like you're not a Christian unless you
Right.
say flibble double, every time.
right,
you know, like,
exactly.
I don't-
And it was interesting because that was kind of their focus.
Yeah.
Was like spiritual gifts.
Right.
And that's kind of how they like served the campus was like, oh, they would go and like, I mean, they would tell me stories of like, oh, like we went and we prayed for healing over this guy and his like foot was magically healed, or like we like had a word, like that's their like phrase, like, oh, I have a word for you.
Oh,
like
yeah, I
they
love that.
pray,
Yeah.
yeah, love it. And they'd be like, oh, like I see this sun in the sky with the plants, and I don't know, like random stuff.
I'm picking up on what your feelings are about all this.
Yeah, I mean, like, it just, because, I mean, for myself, I just felt like it was so forced a lot of the times.
Yeah.
And I think that, like, it made, like, when other people would do it, I'd be like, wow, it's, like, so like, it's seemingly so natural for them.
Right.
Like, how come I don't have that? How come I can't just, like, prophesy over somebody?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And I don't think they want you to feel that way, or they tried to make me feel like I was less than because I didn't, like, have the gift or whatever.
Yeah.
But that's just how I felt. Like,
Interesting.
because that was such the focus.
Yeah.
It wasn't necessarily like the gospel was almost secondary to these spiritual gifts.
That's when it's starting
Right.
to become an issue. Is when
Exactly.
it's like we're all about this thing.
Right.
We don't really talk about grace and mercy and
Yeah.
substitution. Yeah.
And well, that was the other thing too, is like, it was like grace, grace, grace to the point where there was no sanctification talked about. Like it was kind of like my thinking, like before I started going to this was like, oh, like Jesus forgives you. And then it ends
Right.
there.
Right.
There's no like real transformation or heart change or action or whatever.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
like, okay, Jesus forgives you. Like, now let's just speak in tongues. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there was that.
I was part of a young adults group one time, and we would pray before our meetings and stuff.
Yeah.
And there was a couple folks in there that were tongue speakers. And okay, let's all pray. All right. And then somebody start praying, and sure enough, that they would, while other people are talking to God, and I think genuinely praying, I'm hearing this Kaddish. They love saying Kaddish.
Yeah.
Did you notice that?
Or
Kaddish.
like Shaba.
Shaba, Kaddish, Kaddish.
Yeah.
That doesn't even mean anything. Stop it.
Yeah.
It was everything in me not to go like, hey, shut up. I'm trying to pray here. I'm talking to God. I don't know what you're saying.
Yeah.
But the Bible says if there's no one to translate, be quiet. You remember that part? That's what it says.
That's the thing too, is like this church. I think this is my takeaway from this, is that like going there it was good for me in that season, because I needed to know that like God was real.
Right.
And I think that kind of like people's stories and just how passionate they were about God like really showed me that.
Yeah. That is one thing I do admire about that.
Right.
It's just the enthusiasm. Even though it might be a little over dramatized and little days of our lives there, but it's still like there's an energy, there's an excitement, enthusiasm.
And I'm not going to sit here and say like it was fake, like people genuinely loved God.
Yeah.
Even if like things that they may have practiced may not have been biblical.
Right.
Like I know they love God.
That was a question I got at the camp we just went to. We did an open questions thing, and some of the high schoolers were asking like, okay, so how wrong can you be but still be saved?
That's a good question.
I was like, oh, dang it. Like how long?
High schoolers.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And so that's in that kind of
see, that's
zone
so
for me.
interesting.
It's like,
right?
I think you can do all kinds of kind of weird crap.
Yeah.
But still be saved.
Yeah.
Maybe less fruitful because you're busy focusing on this other thing instead of,
that's true.
the redemptive process.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And then the other thing was like the pastor, this was after like maybe a year of me being there, that started to notice that the pastor like wouldn't really preach from the Bible.
Oh,
like
he's a good advice preacher.
Yes. Oh my goodness. That's exactly how I phrase it when I tell people, is he just like gives like good advice or like life lessons type of sermons without really referring to the Bible. And then there was one time where he like went up on stage and was like, the Lord did not speak to me last night, so I'm here with nothing. And then he just started talking about random stuff. I was like, what?
Okay. Could you imagine if R.K. Kwan pulled that one?
No.
Hey, everyone, just not really feeling it today.
People would boo.
Oh, my gosh.
Throw him off the stage.
I'd like to see him try it just to mess with everybody. He's like, I don't have anything today. I thought I did.
I can imagine him using that as an illustration, though. Yeah.
You know what he would do is just open up the book and just preach out of some. The guy's got 1,000 sermons written in his head at any moment. So
that's true.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he would do that, and then he like left because he wanted to start his own church. And so then the young adult ministry, like we were left with like no pastor, like nothing. It would be guest speakers every week.
Can't ride that very long.
Yeah, and I think like I just was it was like that passage where it's like you're only drinking spiritual milk, but you're not eating the true food. It was like,
and you were aware of that at the time?
Yeah, you remember? I was like, I mean, so the guy that I had been dating at the time kind of pointed it out, and then I was like, okay, yeah, that's true. And so then we decided to move churches. Yeah. But it was kind of hard because I was so involved. Yeah. I was like part of the core team at that church, and I had worked there a little bit. Like I did like administrative stuff for them.
Okay.
And we were there for like maybe 2-ish years. And yeah, so it was kind of hard to leave, but the leadership was really gracious, and they were like, they like kind of knew it was time, I think, too. Like, yeah, so they were really gracious when I left. So I was like,
where'd you go from there?
And then, so this is my opposite church experience. And
so you went from charismatic church?
Yes, to very conservative.
Okay. If you don't want to say the name of it, I'm totally fine with that. We have to.
Yeah, it's a church called New Life Community Church. It's in San Jose.
New Life.
Yeah.
It's a good name.
It's kind of small.
Only a few thousand churches with that exact name.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so we started going there, and I think I started like really liking it right away because it like they really were big on like preaching the word and being true to what the word said.
Right.
And I think because I'd gone so long without really hearing the word being preached, that
you were hungry for it.
Yes, exactly. And so coming to this church, I was like, wow, like they really hold the Bible to such high esteem. Like I think that's great, and we should stay here. And then, the sermons were good. And they really like their style was mostly like exegetical, like they just go through all the verses one by one, and then talk about application at the end type thing.
Yeah.
And that worked, and it was very like relevant, you know. Yeah, and I didn't really start seeing the issues until until I became like a member.
Okay.
And once I became a member, I started getting discipled by someone at the church. And she said some, like at the time, I think I questioned it, but I didn't like do much about it. Like she would say things like kind of judgy things like, oh, like you can tell someone's walk with God by how they dress, and like stuff like weird legalistic type things like that.
Like that.
I was like, oh, it's a little weird and
the church lady kind of thing.
Yeah, just a little like, yeah, I don't know, things like that.
Okay.
And then it all really came to fruition when Matt and I started dating. And
oh yeah, so let's pause there then.
Okay.
We'll come back to that.
Yes.
Explain how he came into your so you said you met actually.
Yeah, so we knew each other
way before.
When we were like little children in our little uniforms at Christian Community School.
Oh man.
But we're like 2 grades apart, so we only knew of each other.
Okay.
But I knew
it's a long time, man. It's like a quarter of your life.
Like decades. Yeah. Exactly.
Cradle robber.
Well, I knew him mostly because his mom worked at the school. So his mom used to be like a teacher's assistant. Okay. Yeah. So then I since I knew her, I knew like, oh, her kids, which is Matt. And then we went to the same elementary school, and he also went to Washington.
All right.
Yeah, but I didn't know. We even were both in Youth Alive together, which is the Christian club.
Yeah.
But like we still didn't even know each other. So I don't know how that happened. And then he went to Riverside.
That'd have been so cute. I was waiting for that moment. Like I saw him in 5th grade. And I was like, I'm gonna marry that guy.
I love his freckles.
No, didn't happen.
No.
Okay.
And then so then he went to Riverside for college, and I stayed up here. And then once we both reconnected at New Life.
Just happened that way.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
We like.
Did you remember him? You were like, oh, I remember that guy.
I was like, hey, I kind of know you, and then he was like, hey, I kind of know you too. Yes, it was like that.
Okay, no, not like stalker know you, but
no. Like, I was just like, oh yeah, like I kind of remember you. Like, oh, didn't you go to CCS? Oh yeah, totally. Right. And then, but at the time, I was dating somebody else actually.
Okay.
And so then we sit down for lunch and stuff, and it's so funny because our first impressions of each other are so bad because he just kept asking me so many questions, and I just felt berated. I was like, can you like not be so aggressive? But see, this is the thing. So this was like one of the first Sundays that I had come to New Life, and he was like, oh, like, why did you leave your old church and blah, blah, like those kind of questions. And I think I was just still kind of insecure.
Yeah, you're in recovery mode.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And he was just like berating me. And I was like, please stop. Like, it's too aggressive. I can't handle this. He just kept asking me questions. And then I was just giving him like short answers, you know.
Yeah.
And then later I found out that he thought I was boring because
you had such short answers.
I had such short answers, and I was just so disinterested in him.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's pretty funny.
Obviously, you grew on each other a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, so. Yeah.
And so then you broke up with.
Yeah, we broke up.
That loser, whoever that was, whatever. probably tiny. Right?
Oh, yeah. So,
How much did he bench? He didn't even lift, I bet.
he did bench 2 plates.
All right.
Once.
That's not bad.
Not bad.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's better than nothing.
Wait, fun fact, he actually goes to Resonate now.
No.
Yeah,
oh my
dude.
gosh. I'm sorry ahead of time. I didn't.
No, it's great.
I called you a loser
cool.
for comedic value alone.
Yeah.
I have no.
Well, yeah, he doesn't know you at all.
Okay.
Not a loser.
Well, he's gonna know.
But we're cool.
He might know me now. So.
Oh, so funny.
If I
But
get jumped, I'm blaming him.
But yeah, no. But we're cool.
Yeah.
And everything.
All right.
So.
But then Matt sees an opening and he's like,
Oh yeah.
this is my
Matt
chance.
is so persistent.
Yeah.
He's like, well, see, here's the thing. So I'm not gonna sit here and ignore this whole part of the story. So
I don't want you to.
Yeah.
Lay it out there.
I am.
This is what we're here for.
This is my time, guys. Okay, so pretty much.
Drink water.
Okay, it's fine. I know it's no. I'm gonna shorten it. I'll make it brief. Okay.
Okay. Well,
But basically,
your
me and
show.
this guy were dating, and we were like kind of serious. But I always felt like he didn't really want to like date to get married. Like he would kind of say it, but he wasn't. Like we were both kind of young at that point. We were like, 21, 22.
Yep.
But the church that we were at, the culture was very much like, okay, don't date for too long. If you date for too long, then that leaves, room for the enemy and you're going to fall into sin. And so you should just get married, which like, I don't like disagree with, but I think it should be case by case. But anyway.
You shouldn't get married just to like keep the devil away.
Right. Exactly. And so, yeah, but we like, we're very different people. And we were just having like some issues in our relationship, and I just felt like he was distant, not as attentive. And then we started this group of friends, and then Matt was in this little group.
Okay.
And Matt was very attentive and very friendly, and so I started to develop like minor feelings for him while I was dating this guy. And then I told the guy that I was dating, I was like, hey, like, I want to be upfront with you. Like, I am having feelings for Matt. And so, but then at the time, I thought that it was just like, just like a little crush. Like, I just kind of admire him. Like, that's what I thought that it was.
Okay.
And then he was like, okay, like, we'll just like, kind of stay away from him then. And like, not really talk to him.
Yes.
And so then we didn't talk to him for like a few months maybe.
Oh no.
Yeah, which is fine. Like he has friends,
Okay.
But it kind of made the group dynamic a little like we weren't a group anymore, basically.
And he's like, man, that boring girl doesn't talk to me anymore.
And so
Fine. She didn't talk to me much anyway.
well, at this point, he had feelings for me. It's a long story about how it came about, but anyway.
All right.
And
she's singing Jesse's girl. Jesse's girl. All right.
Okay, and then so we kind of stayed away from him, and then our friend Michelle Doan, she's in on this, dude.
Shout it.
Shout
why is she in
out.
everybody's
She's
love
always
story?
in everyone's story.
Dude.
Isn't that hilarious?
She's photobombing everyone's wedding photos.
know.
Like that.
Yeah,
Okay.
but we love her.
Yeah.
But anyway, she's okay.
We got to get her hitched one of these days. We're working on it.
know,
Trying to wear her
working on
down.
it.
She says, nah.
You know.
Come on.
I tell her to go on, the coffee meets bagel and things like that.
Do the bagel.
I know, but
I
it's
don't know.
fine.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Keep going.
So, well, this brief story turned very long.
That's fine. They all do. You're the boss. It's your show.
I know.
Do the thing.
Yeah. So then Matt, where was I? Okay. So then we had stayed away from him for a while.
Okay.
And then Michelle's family was coming into town. And all of us, like previous to all of this, had gone on a San Diego trip to visit her and her family, or to visit her family. And so we knew them. And then at this point, we're like, I think everything's cool between us now. Like between me and Matt and my boyfriend at the time, like we're all cool and like the feelings are gone. They've dissipated, whatever. Like I think we can all kind of be friends again, And so we started becoming friends again. And then the feelings just still surfaced, And so just couldn't get away from them.
It's true love.
Yeah, I know, true love. And then and then the whole situation happened again, and then I told my boyfriend at the time, like, hey, these feelings, like, they're not going away. I don't know what to do. And then we're like,
what was
okay,
his response to this? I'm so curious.
Yeah,
like,
I'm
trying to think of how I would take that. I'd be like,
I thought that he would just break up with me.
Yeah.
Like, just flat out. But he, like, wanted to give it a chance. And so I was like, okay. Because when you're with someone for so long and you think you're going to marry them, you're like, okay, let's just do the thing, you know? Like, let's just, So, and he was like, okay. Huh. Like, we'll just cut him off again.
Dang it.
I know. And then basically we ended up breaking up for other reasons. And then, But I mean, it's interesting because when we broke up, it was, okay, so I had hurt my back. I hurt my SI joint deadlifting, actually. Yeah. And then it came out of place and whatever. And so I couldn't sit in a car. I could barely walk, really. I couldn't really do anything. And then, and so I needed him to, like, drive me and, like, do things for me. And so he said that made him realize, like, that he couldn't, like, sacrifice and, like, be a husband in that way if that's the way that we were headed. Like, he just wasn't ready for it.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, okay.
Thanks for letting me know.
Yeah, I was like, thanks.
And good to know.
Yeah, and then, and it was over text. Sorry, dude, if you're listening, but it was.
No, bad form.
We did meet up later, though.
Okay.
Which is fine.
Okay.
But it was just, like, in the moment, like. But you know what? I don't blame him because I think at that point I was so emotional that I would have, like, been, I don't know. Yeah.
Did he at least use, like, emojis or something?
Maybe a thumbs up.
Okay.
Yeah. Crying face. One tear.
One.
Just one tear. But yeah, no. So I ended up breaking up. But that's what I had thought, like, the reason was. But for him, it was that, but coupled with this whole thing with Matt and all that.
Right. Okay.
And so then we broke up.
Drama.
And it was so funny because all of our friends were like, okay, we're not going to tell Matt. Like, we're not going to tell him because if we tell him, he's going to swoop in, you know? So we're just not going to tell him.
He'll figure it out.
Yeah. And then it was so funny because it was like Michelle and then our other close friend that like they decided like, oh, we were not going to tell him. But what ended up happening was he accidentally found out from like our pastor.
Oh, nice.
Who, like, accidentally told him.
Confidentiality there.
He was like, hey, so what do you think about, you know, Katie and blah, 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 breaking up? And
he's like,
Yeah, and he's like,
oh.
And then,
hadn't thought about it.
I know. And then, yeah, so yeah, and then, so it was so funny because Matt, I had blocked him on everything, like all social media, like everything, because I wanted to like just cut him off and like
scorched
leave
earth.
him be.
Right.
And so you know what he did when he found out? He emailed me. Okay.
Yes.
He emailed me.
Any route necessary, right?
No, totally.
Make up a fake profile and friend her.
But he emailed me this. It was very sweet though. He was like, "Hey, like, I'm so sorry. I heard what happened between you and blah, blah, blah. And
You'll have to tell me who this is when we're done.
Yeah, later.
I can't. The blah, blah, blah is killing me.
I should come up with a pseudonym. But, yeah, you and...
we'll just call him Jesse.
Yeah, Jesse.
We already sang the song.
Yeah.
We'll just say Jesse's girl.
Okay, yeah.
All
I
right.
heard that you and Jesse broke up.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm so sorry that had happened. I'm so sorry for any part that I played in it. He's like, going forward in our friendship, I want to know, like, how you, like what you're comfortable with, like, going back to, like, being friends. Since we go to the same church, and the church is pretty small. It's, like, 40 people.
Oh.
He's like, oh, like, how should we go about, interacting with each other? And it was, like, very respectful. And so I was like, hey.
So by now you'd picked up on the fact that you were sort of, like, unfriended, unpersoned.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He knew.
Okay. So he knew.
He was involved in the process. We were like,
oh.
Yeah, sorry.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So now he's like, hey, can I come back?
Yeah.
Can we be friends? Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Because we were friends, we were good friends.
Yeah.
And then I was like, hey, like, thanks for reaching out. Like, yeah, it's, like, hard, but, I think this had to happen, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I'm fine with us being friends and, like, talking in group settings. Like, that's totally fine. Fine with that. It's cool.
Cool. All right.
And then for the longest time, he kept, like, trying to message me. Like, individually, and I said, no, I don't want to talk to you. Like, just groups, man, groups.
Wow. All right.
But he was very persistent, and then, like, eventually, the feelings resurfaced again because, where else would they go?
Right.
Nowhere.
And
so we eventually had to talk about it. And I remember this was Easter Day of 2017.
Wow.
I told him, and I said, Matthew, I told him, we're going to meet up at Starbucks, and I need to tell you, we need to talk about our friendship, because I wanted to tell him that there would be no chance of me ever dating him. So he said, yes.
Gosh.
I know.
Katie.
I'm so mean. But, in a
No
nicer
chance?
way. Yeah,
No
zero
chance?
chance. I told him.
Come
I was
on.
like, hey. So we went to Starbucks, okay? The Starbucks that's down the street from our house now. Okay?
Yeah. Okay.
And I said, listen, I know we have this history and stuff, but I really just don't see us dating ever. So, we should just, get over each other. And at the time, he agreed. He was like, totally agree. Yeah, I definitely see that.
What are you going to do? What are you going to do? You have to go with that. It's not like, no.
I know.
There could be a chance.
That's true. That's true.
1 in a million. Come on.
Because at this point, I was like, I'm going to be single for a year. Every girl goes through that whole, I'm going to be single and love Jesus for a year. A whole year. I'm not even going to think about boys.
My
Boys
relationship
are gross.
with him. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. No relationships. I'm going to be just so godly. That's what I was going through.
Read your Bible every day.
Yes. Read my Bible. Memorize the verses.
Memorize the whole thing.
Yeah. Disciple somebody. It was going to happen. And I wasn't going to let any boy come in between me and the Lord.
Right.
Okay? This is what I thought.
Sounds good.
Yeah. And so that's why I told him. I was like, hey, I'm not dating. I just, we should just get over it. I told him, these are my exact words. I said, we should actively get over each other. Which means if a thought of me comes into your brain, you just pluck it out.
Oh, gosh.
I didn't say that part, but And he agreed. Okay?
Okay.
And then everything was fine. I was like, okay, we DTR'd, and everything's fine.
Yeah. And he gets in the car, and he's like, what the heck just happened?
Probably. Yeah. And then after that, we, it's really blurry now, but pretty much, we didn't really talk that much at church. We would, sometimes say hi. I don't remember exactly what happened, but, this is what happened.
All right.
This was the time. So, he had his very first ever powerlifting meet. Okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
He's so quiet about this. I'm glad it's getting out. Yes.
Okay, this is his first ever powerlifting meet in June of 2017.
Okay.
And it's in Sacramento. And so it was supposed to be a whole group of us going to go watch his powerlifting meet. But everyone flaked, and it ended up just being me and one other girl. And her boyfriend was also competing.
Okay.
So it was Matt, this guy, this girl, and me.
Turned into a double date.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Nice.
And Matt's other friend too.
How much
Gary.
how much did you pay everyone to not come to that?
So it was so funny. So then we get there, and I hadn't really talked to him that much in the past couple months. So from April to June. So April was when I DTR'd him, and then June was his meet or whatever. So I hadn't really talked to him that much.
Okay.
We'd kind of talk here and there, but not really in groups. And then at the meet, there were just sparks again. I don't know how to describe it, okay? But
well, when you're in that just caveman testosterone filled, just people moving.
Well, it was funny because
that's a man.
It was in Sacramento, and the meet was a 2-day meet. And so it was Saturday, Sunday. He was lifting on Sunday, but we didn't know that. And I had only planned to come on Saturday, so I actually ended up not even seeing him lift.
Okay.
But he won the whole thing, so.
Nice.
So that's good.
He won something.
He won something.
First place.
Oh, first place in his weight class.
Hey,
whatever.
That's a win.
That is a win. Anyway, so yeah, and we were just talking, and it's just the best way to describe it is we just had chemistry, you know? It's such a lame term, but I there's no other way to put it.
I've come to hate that term.
I hate that term, but I don't know how else to put it. You just vibe with each other, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
You just
know. You know.
You just know.
Exactly.
If you know, you know.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. So then after that, we were like, oh, like, let's have a conversation about, like, relationships and just, like, the possibility of dating. But again.
And he's like, no. I don't want to do this again.
Well, no, both of us were like, okay, yeah, we should talk about it, basically.
Okay.
Like, at this point, I was more open to it. But then, you know, I was on my whole 1 year of not dating thing. So I was like,
yeah.
Yo, like, I made this promise to the Lord.
I'm a nun for a year.
Jesus himself, okay? I made this promise, and I was, like, not going to date for a year, which meant February to February. Like, I'm not going to date anybody. I'm not going to think about boys, nothing.
Very strict.
And he was like, that's dumb.
Yes. Finally. That's it. I'm over this.
Yeah, he was like, are you serious? Like, that's so dumb. Okay, and then this is where the church stuff comes into play.
Okay. See, we came all the way back.
Okay, yes.
We did it. Right.
Wonderful. Okay, so, well, this is the start of it. Like, more stuff happens. Man, this is a long story. Okay, anyway, so at this church, there's a dating culture, and a culture that you need to follow in order to, like, be perceived as, like, holy. Like, okay, you're doing the right thing, you know? And the way that they did it at this church was you have to have your discipler talk to their discipler, and they talk to each other, and then they set you up. And that's how it's done. Sort of it's like arranged marriage.
Yeah, it's a lightweight arranged marriage.
Lightweight, yeah.
Weird.
But see, this is because like the whole culture at that church is that basically the leaders and the people over you like run your life. Like it's very like authoritarian.
Okay.
Yeah. And so you basically can't really make any life-altering decisions without their consent or without their... And if you do, then you're looked down upon. So then, long story short, Matt and I decided, like, we were going to date. You know? Like, we see each other, like, as, like, possible... possible spouses, like possible marriage partners in the future. And so we want to pursue dating. And they knew about the whole situation with my ex, Jesse. Okay. And they knew all that stuff. And so they were like, I don't know, you know, and.
So they're thinking you also need the year.
I guess.
With Jesus
or like
something.
Not even at all. I don't even know what they thought, basically.
You're broken.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, exactly. Which I am. I am. And I was.
Yeah, join the club. Take a number.
Yeah, exactly. And so they... At the start of our relationship, they were so against it. And so during the first part of our relationship, it really put a strain on it because I felt the need like, okay, we need to prove ourselves. Like we need to prove that we are a good match, that we're a good couple, that we can be holy and sanctified and all of that while dating each other, you know?
Okay.
But Matt... He's different. Like, he doesn't care about what other people think. He doesn't care about living up to other people's standards, which I really admire that, you know?
Good.
But I can't do that. Like, I have to please people. It goes back to pleasing people.
Yeah,
and, like, you know, having that. Right. Yeah, like, yeah, just making sure people approve of me, basically.
Okay.
And so, so then we spent, like, the whole first couple months just, like, trying to, like, you know, look like a good couple, like still serving in church and like not sitting next to each other in church. That was a thing too. Like if you sat next to the person you're dating in church, you would get talked to.
Whoa.
Yeah, like they would say like, I mean, I don't know exactly what they would say, but they look down upon it because it makes it look like you only care about each other and not the body.
Right.
Like,
we just tell people that you need 2 Bible spaces between you.
Yeah. So, yeah. And so once we kind of saw that dating culture, the issues with that, that's what kind of like opened up our thinking and like, oh, is this church like really like legit? I don't know. And then Matt and I started dating. And then we started having issues with like purity. And I think it was so much so like we were trying to stray away from it so much and just do good and do the right thing and not like fail that we end up failing. Right. You know?
Yeah, it's like when someone tells you don't think about elephants.
Yes.
The first thing you think about is a big fat elephant. Yeah.
Exactly. And so so we struggled with that. And then it was never like, I mean, it's hard. It's hard to describe sin, but I had confessed it to a sister who ended up being my discipler at that time, who was different than the person I'd mentioned earlier.
Right.
But because it didn't work out with her. Yeah. That's a long story too. But so I told her, and I was like, hey, like, could you keep us accountable, you know? And so I would like text her when we're on dates and stuff, and I thought it was going okay, you know?
Okay.
And then for Matt, it was a little bit harder, I think, because he had never struggled with like sexual sin before, and I had struggled with it like in past relationships, but he hadn't really, and so he didn't really have that experience of like opening up to someone about it or like
Right.
telling anybody.
Yeah, the
Whereas
accountability thing is
yeah,
hard.
exactly. But I was more open to it, so I had told my discipler, and so I had asked Matt, like, hey, like, I think maybe you should talk to somebody about it, you know, just to like keep us even more accountable and like help us through this, basically. And so he like kind of started to tell. So his discipler at the time was one of the pastors. And so he had kind of opened up to him a little bit, like was starting to.
Okay.
And then once this pastor kind of heard what Matt was saying, he called my discipler and like talked to her. And basically, like Matt hadn't shared everything yet, but I had shared everything. And so then when he found out, like all hell broke loose.
Oh gosh.
Like, oh my gosh, Katie and Matt had sex. Like, this is like,
it's the end of the world.
yeah, it's the end of the world, basically. And so then he had told all the other pastors. And then that Sunday, I think either that Sunday or Sunday after that, they all found out. So there's 4 pastors at the church. 2 of them took me aside and 2 of them took Matt aside. And they had asked us, like, what was going on. And I had told them everything. And then at the end of it, they were like, okay, so now you guys are going to break up, basically. And
Wow.
then I was like, what? Huh? Very confused, yeah. And yeah, it was, I mean,
An intervention.
yeah, an intervention.
That's what that is.
Exactly. And they were a lot harder on Matt, you know, because being the man, like, he should have, like, taken responsibility and
Right.
blah, blah, blah. But they were not gracious about it. Because, like I said, this is a very small church.
Yeah.
And the church is very young. So, I don't know how long. I think this was their 5th year, I think, being established as a church. And
Still pretty new.
yeah, and you know, I don't think they'd ever dealt with sexual sin in their church before. Like, never. And so
Well, yeah,
hearing
I mean-
about it was probably like, what? You know? And so, yeah. So that was hard because they were so hard on Matt, and they were like, you know, you should have been a leader. Like, and at one point, so they told us to break up. And then I was like, I think we should just do it. Because at this point, I was like, I felt like I was choosing between him and God. That's what they kind of made me feel like I was choosing between.
Right,
Like I was
right.
choosing between my relationship with him or God. And I was like, of course I need to choose God. And so breaking up seemed like, okay, I was making the choice toward God. And so then we'd broken up for a little bit. And then at this point, they were like, okay, now you're going to go through this repentance process. And it wasn't laid out. It was pretty much they would sit us down separately and then just ask us questions. And based on our answers, they would see if we were repentant. And so I remember one time they sat me down. This was like the first or second time that second or third time that they'd sat me down. And then they asked me like, so like they had me like read a book about like sexual sin. And they asked me about the book, and they asked me like, so... And now looking back on your relationship with Matt, like, what do you think? And I didn't even know what to say. I was like,
Yeah, what do you want to hear?
yeah, exactly. Exactly. I wanted to just say what they wanted to hear. But I was like, well, we sinned, and yeah, it was wrong. Like that. I didn't know what to say. And then they were like, and then they had me answer like a few other questions. But at the end, they were like, you know, Katie, like if you were really repentant, then you would have said that you regretted your relationship with him. And I was like, okay.
Strange.
Yeah, it was
It's
really
like
weird.
It's like a seems like some kind of movie.
Yeah.
Right? Like, come to the
Yeah.
inner room.
Yes,
We're going
exactly.
to examine
it's
your
so
soul.
strange.
Yeah.
And at
So
that,
that's like a Scientology kind of thing. They do
Yeah.
something similar. They write reports on each other and turn things in. Oh, it's something.
it's
Yeah.
really interesting. And so, yeah, and then, so then they would ask me these questions, and I like didn't know how to answer, and they basically said that I wasn't like repentant. And one of the lead pastor told me, like, you know, Katie, like, you need to take this more seriously, because if you don't, one day you could end up in hell, and that would be very sad.
Oh, man.
And I was like,
Okay.
yeah, so it's strange because at this point, both of us were members, right? And membership at this church was, if you become a member, that means that they have been able to see that you're truly a believer, basically. And so in my mind, I'm like, well, if you think I'm a believer, then you wouldn't say that one day I could end up in hell for this. You know what I mean?
You're not in charge of that anyway.
Yeah,
Stop
exactly.
it.
But see, that's the thing, is that they believe that that they have the authority to deem people as like, it's just really strange.
That's a few layers of funky theology.
And then during Matt's repentance meetings, like
oh my gosh.
like one of them told him, like, I think it was the lead pastor told him that he should basically just renounce his faith because he's acting in line with a non-believer.
No.
And like stuff like that.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, so it was like really strange. And
that hurts because you trusted these people.
Right, exactly. And you built relationships with them. And
that's why you're going through this process, right? You're trying to salvage something.
The thing with like repentance is like, I think Jesus should be in that, you know, like, but he literally was not mentioned like a single time during these meetings, like forgiveness and grace and Jesus and hope, and none of that was mentioned, you know. And for them, it's like, I think that they don't want to like abuse it, which I understand.
Right.
But I think when, like, at this level, I think it's necessary, right? Because what I learned through that is like, it's not like the condemnation we feel that leads us to repentance.
Yeah.
It's like Jesus's love and his kindness towards us that leads us to repentance, right?
Exactly.
And so they were playing on the other side, like, okay, condemnation, like you should feel guilt for this, like blah, blah, blah.
Guilt-driven repentance is not. I don't believe true repentance.
Right. Exactly.
I think it's when, and this is when I've experienced this for myself. Is like when I truly understand, like, okay, I blew it in this way, and then I realize,
right,
Christ already actually knew that when he said it's finished.
Right.
Before I ever did it, he knew it. And knowing that, he accepted it. And he says, you're my son. I forgive you.
Right.
And it's almost like repentance is just us kind of like through the process of our own sin, we're actually like excavating just a little bit more of how amazing Jesus actually is.
Totally.
Like every time I sin, I find out a little more how much he loves me.
Yeah.
And it's not like I'm sinning to test his affection.
Exactly.
It's already there.
Right.
But yeah, that's what leads me to be broken. It's like, oh my gosh.
Exactly.
Like, okay, yes.
Yeah. Totally.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
The other way that's not
totally
effective.
No, not effective. It just like leads to just loathing, like self-loathing, and then it leads you even to just like continue to fall back in the sin, because if you think that you're hopeless, you're like, might as well just keep doing it then.
Exactly. It's a cycle.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah, I think Ryan did a sermon on it with the
I'm sure he
same
has.
Picture.
Yeah. I can see it in my head.
Yeah. Exactly.
I know it's in there.
Yeah. But yeah, so after those meetings, we had like talked about what went on in both of our meetings, and we're like, this is not biblical, you know?
Yeah.
And so we decided, like, okay, we're not going to do this anymore. And pretty much, so they went by, I think it's Matthew. There's like a whole process where, like, if your brother sins against 18. You go to Matthew 18.
Right.
Matthew 18.
Go to him alone, then go to him with 3.
Right, exactly.
And then send him off to live in his sin alone.
Yes,
like
basically. So we were at that point, basically, where they were like, hey, if Yeah, so they kind of skipped some steps, which...
No kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got that already.
Yeah, and so then they told us. So I had sent them an email saying, like, hey, like, I'm not going to do this anymore for these reasons, laid it all out, whatever.
Right.
And they just responded, and they just said, like, hey, like, if you don't continue in this, like, then we're forced to tell the church of your sin. And so, yeah, and then at this point I was like, whatever. I mean, not whatever. Like, obviously, I didn't want this to happen.
Right.
But I would rather that happen than stay and go through this.
Yeah.
And, like, do whatever they wanted me to do, which I didn't even know at the time. And so yeah, both of us had left. And then they had told the members of the church. They had, like, posted something on their Facebook group about it.
Oh,
yeah.
gosh.
Yeah. So it was hard because we had a few close friends there that were members, and they even got in trouble for talking to us.
Oh my gosh.
So then
this is very Scientology kind of thing that they
so they got in trouble for talking to us, and then they, like, I don't know, it's very strange.
Wow.
They got like one strike against them, so then if they got another strike, then they get kicked out or something like that. Yeah, I don't know.
This is layers of bonkers, man.
Yeah, so then we had left, and then they posted that thing, and then for a while, so during this time is when people of the church are called to try to reach out to those who have left. And so I was getting all these emails from, like, women, from, like, my friends, like, telling me, like, you're in sin, like, why would you do this, like, you need to come back, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, and it was just, like, every day I was, like, getting an email.
Dude.
And it was just so hard to read that I ended up just having Michelle read them. And then she would tell me if it's worth reading or not. Because it was just heartbreaking at that time. Like, it was so hard to read because all they had heard of the story was from the pastor's angle.
Yeah.
And I understand because at this church, whatever the pastors say, you take as their word, like as Bible, basically.
Yeah.
And so I don't blame them because at one point that was me, right? I was the one trying to, like, get into their inner circle and trying to please them and whatever. So I understood that that's what they were trying to do was to email me and try to get me back and do what the pastors were telling them to do. And then I had one girl, like, write me, and I wrote her back and I said, hey, like, it hurts me that you didn't hear it from my side. And then she responded and she said, well, sometimes you don't need to hear the other side to see the fruit of the sin or something like that. And I was like, okay.
It's cute, but
yeah. I was like, okay. And I just didn't respond. I mean, a lot of them, I responded like once and then they responded back and I was like, we're just going to fight, you know, like we just don't see it the same. And I think it was hard because the things that Matt and I were telling them that they said, like we would tell them, like, they told me that I'm going to go to hell and they told Matt to renounce his faith. Like they just didn't believe it because it's like, oh, my pastors would never say that, you know, like it's like such a hard thing to believe, you know?
That's okay.
And so that was hard, I think, because for a long time, it's like you want to feel like people believe you. You want to feel like they see where you're coming from. I wanted my friends at that time at that church to see, like, this is not right. Like, I wanted to feel like, validated, exactly. Yeah. But it just wasn't happening. Wow. And so then because of that, it made me feel like, oh, was this wrong to leave? Like, am I actually in sin? And so for, like, the longest, like, so this happened June of 2018. And for that whole summer, I was just so confused about if I was saved. I was like, God, I know that, like, I feel it in my heart that this is not right. And I see it in your word that this is not right.
Right.
But they're making me feel like I'm not a believer. They're making me feel like I'm not saved. They're making me feel like I'm going to go to hell for this.
Wow.
And so, like, every day I would just pray, like, God, like, I want to believe again that I'm saved. Like, like, not having my assurance of salvation was, like, the worst time in my life. Because I was just, like, crying out to God every day, like, because it's like my eternal life is like almost gone. It's like, or the thought of it, like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, am I like not going to be with God forever in heaven anymore because of this whole thing, because we left this church, you know?
Oh, man.
And so I was just dealing with that. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So.
What a trip.
I know. And then we went to Resonate.
And then everything's wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
so
then,
tell me,
yeah.
I'm assuming Michelle had something to do with that also.
Oh, yeah. So she
Okay.
was like, well, it was funny because we were going to check out a bunch of different churches.
Yeah.
And
She's like, don't do that.
Yeah, she was like, we'll just come to Resonate once. And
Yeah.
we're like, all right. And so we come, and then we just never checked out any other churches.
Yeah.
Which is funny because, I mean, I feel like that happens a lot. But
That's my story, too.
Yeah.
It was like the first stop. I was like, oh, yeah, this is it. I'll just stay here.
exactly. And so the story of New Life continues, though, because they had reached out to Pastor Ryan.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and so they'd emailed him and said, like, basically, you're housing fugitives.
Oh, no.
Pretty much. And so, I mean, Ryan was so gracious because he actually wanted to sit down and, like, hear our story, you know? And so that was, like...
Were you nervous about that?
I was so nervous.
Yeah,
because, I mean, my past experience with pastors, like, was just terrible.
Right. So you're like, oh, here we go again.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
It was
man.
like, oh my gosh. And I was like, oh my gosh, what if he makes us go back to that place?
You need to finish the process.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, what if he makes us do that? But he didn't, thank the Lord. But yeah, he just listened to our story, which I think was so different because, like, nobody had wanted to hear our story, you know, at least no one from that church, you know, or anyone, like, involved. And so he just sat us down and he was like, hey, just tell me your story. And so we just told him, and he was so gracious. And he just talked about, like, forgiveness and grace and, you know, God of second chances and all that kind of stuff. And, yeah.
Different message.
Yeah, different message. But also, like, I think going to Resonate, we were, like, if I'm being honest, we were a little bit, like, skeptical.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, what you know about, like, big churches is, like, oh, maybe they just preach the prosperity gospel. Maybe that's why people are flocking to this church, because
the flashing lights.
Yeah. So we were like, okay, like, we want to go into this with like being okay if we don't stay, right? Like, if there's that issue of grace and sanctification and whatever. But I mean, through coming to Resonate, we realized, like, that's not it at all. Like, they're totally, like, Pastor Ryan and all the other pastors do preach, like, hard sermons of, like, you know, like, killing sin and, like, hard things like that. And so,
but it's through the lens of grace,
of the gospel. Exactly.
Mercy, like, true propitiation, like
these. Exactly. Where it's really, in the end, not up to us, but it's, like, God who's already done it.
Right.
And we just are obedient because of him, right?
Yeah.
Not because we feel like we have to owe him or whatever.
It's good.
Yeah. So
Preach it.
yeah, so it's been good. I think, like, the past year was it was busy, actually. We got married and a bunch of stuff happened, but I mean, it was nice to, like, continue to process it. I'm really bad at processing, actually.
Right.
Like, I just kind of jump from thing to thing. I'm like, okay, whatever that happened, okay. But I think, like, when my eternity in my mind, my eternity with God was on the line, it forced me to process.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And that's one of those things where it's like the situation sucked, and the fact that you feel that way sucked, but through it, you struggled with your own faith and actually landed in a wiser, healthier, more complete theologically.
Totally.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah,
it's almost like God promised that he would make good of all things for those who are
totally. Yeah, that was, like,
yeah.
my verse for the longest time.
Yeah,
like,
it's
it
true.
sucks right now, but God will use it.
Yeah. You know, the hardest thing to do is to develop the discipline of actually thanking him ahead of time.
Right.
For, like, okay, God, this stinks right now. You know it does, but you're going to do something.
Right. Yeah.
Thank you for doing this.
Exactly.
Like,
yeah. And it just forces me to have, like, that heavenly mindset, right? Like, oh, this isn't going to be forever. Right. Like, this is just temporary. Like, we have eternity with him, like, after we die. You know?
Yeah.
Like, yeah. So.
And then you all got hitched and everything.
I know, yeah. And then I got my first teaching job. 2019 was a good year.
That's a good year.
Yeah, it's a good year.
Wow.
Yeah, it's fun.
So what do you kind of like? It seems like you're in a little bit of like cruising altitude right now.
Bit,
Like things have kind of stabilized. You're plugged in church wise. You've got new friends.
Right. Yeah.
Kind of.
I'm apprenticing Angela for MC right now.
Explain what apprenticing is and what an MC is.
So basically, Resonate is a church that believes in disciples who make much of Jesus. And so an MC is a missional community of just women or just men or mixed groups where we come together and we study the Bible and we hold each other accountable.
But not in a weird way.
Yeah. And we we share each other's burdens and all of that. And so Angela is a leader of one of those. And so she asked me to be her apprentice so that in the future, currently she's training me up to be a leader so that in the future I could hopefully lead my own group.
Right.
So that's something that I want to like kind of focus on more, because this is my second year doing it.
Okay.
So I did it last year and then now this year and then hopefully start my own group in the fall. So kind of focusing on that and like.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So it's cool.
What would you say you're learning right now? Either about yourself or about him?
Oh my goodness. You know what I'm learning is like I have this huge idol of comfort. Like I just want to be comfortable. Yeah. Like I just want to have like a nice quiet life and the 2 kids and a dog and I just want to like be comfortable. And I think like right now I'm taking Perspectives, which is this other class about like God's work globally and what God is doing globally. And I think it totally it's totally different from or opposite of like my idol of comfort because it's like God is calling us to like missions, right? And if I just want to be comfortable, I will literally never go on that mission.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's not even missions like overseas. It's just being missional in your life, like in your workplace, to your friends, like wherever you go, like the gym and stuff. I mean, like Matt and I were like avid gym goers. And so we want to make that like our mission too, like people that we meet at the gym,
Darn it. That's one thing. I'm so bad about that.
Yeah. It's hard.
You guys are the last humans that I've spoken to at the gym.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That was a while ago.
I know. I don't talk to. I go into caveman mode.
It's hard.
Sometimes I see people I know and I'll point at them.
Oh yeah.
Hey, all right, see you. Yep. What's up? Headphones are on. I'm not taking them off. We're not starting a thing.
Yeah. I mean, because when you're working out, you just want to like get in and get.
I'm there to get some business done.
Totally.
I don't get time to talk to everybody.
Totally.
The caveman mode.
And that's where you kind of have to choose, right?
Fighting gravity here.
I know. Yeah. But.
So Perspectives then. That's every Sunday.
Sunday from 3 to 6.
3 hours?
Yeah.
Oh, dude.
I know.
I didn't know it was that long.
It's so long.
Because sometimes I'm there at 3 still.
Well, like before the class started, I was like, 3 hours. In my mind, I operate on 45-minute increments because that's how it is when I teach, right?
Right.
And like 3 hours straight.
I gotta get up and walk
around. But there is a break. Like we go for like an hour and a half-ish, and then there's like a 25-minute break, and then another little bit of time, like an hour.
Wow.
Yeah. So
how many people are doing that? There's
like 100.
More than that.
More than that. 100 something.
I poked my head out of a door yesterday. Yeah. I didn't realize I came out of a door that was behind the speaker.
Oh,
I don't know if you saw me do that.
I think I did.
I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Everybody's here.
Yeah. And it's so cool because it's like people from other churches too.
Yeah.
And it's like multi-generational.
Oh, yes.
So it's so cool.
Everyone's there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, and people just in different life stages, just we're all different. And it's cool because like the gospel unites us, and we're like there to like learn and grow and be on mission. So it's cool.
Yeah. And it parks a mirror in front of you in a lot of ways.
Right.
And it says, hey, where are you at with this?
Yeah.
What mission are you on?
It's just so challenging.
Whose kingdom are you building?
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what I'm learning about myself is I love comfort, but I need to like not love comfort. Yeah. Or like, I think I need to just not focus so much on it, Because if I'm so busy, like, being on mission, doing God's work, like, God cares for our needs regardless, you know?
Yeah.
Like, no matter whatever situation, like, he will care for us.
Yeah.
You know? So it's not, like, up to me to control that. Yeah.
Oh, we try, though.
Yeah, we try.
We try.
And, yeah, we fail. But
So what do you think is next?
what's next?
What is next? You going to keep the teaching job going?
Yeah, I think I will. I love it. Yeah. Yeah, be an MC leader, hopefully.
Apprenticing MC?
Yeah, later this coming year.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, yeah, we'll see.
Here's
Definitely,
a question. Have you ever kicked around the idea of, like, serving in a high school or middle school ministry?
Yeah, I thought about it. Actually, I visited AMP once.
I know.
I know. Oh, yeah. Were you there? Well, I visited high school. I visited high school.
That's why I'm asking.
I know. Yeah. How's it going right now?
It's so good.
Oh, yeah.
It's so good. We just went to a winter camp.
Yeah.
And up in Tahoe for
That's so fun.
4 days.
Yeah.
There's no snow. We had to look really hard to find any, but it's amazing. Like there was several times when I was just stunned at I'm not in every group. Like the girls do their thing. Everyone's by grade and gender and all that. But
yeah.
So I have the junior guys.
Okay.
And just their like willingness to just really like share all their stuff, to really like they genuinely want to be discipled and they want to grow and I want to understand myself, and they're asking like such like
that's awesome
varsity level like questions
so
about
young.
the
They're
and
like 17, 16.
Oh my gosh. When I was that age, I mean, people have heard my story, but I thought God wasn't real. If Jesus was real, he's a crazy guy. Like, this is baloney. Don't read the Bible. Burn that thing. Like, what are you doing? You're wasting heat. Like,
right.
But I was so proud of them. Yeah.
That's
amazing.
amazing.
We got some new guys coming in. My guys I challenged them to start inviting people. It's amazing.
Yeah. So you do both middle and high school?
I don't do middle.
Oh, you don't do middle?
Yeah, because middle school meets on Sundays.
Middle is Yvonne does middle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I do the grade school on Sundays.
Oh yeah. Okay.
And then I show up to high school stuff for fun. They don't pay me for that.
Okay. Nice.
No, I pay dearly for that.
Do you like high school better than the other ones? Better than grade school?
They're so different.
They are different. Yeah.
And I was just talking about this actually to the grade school kids on Sunday.
Yeah.
Is that it's this crazy thing because we have them for 1st through 5th grade, and we get to see them just start to like a seed just opening up, and you see something start to sprout, and you're like, you launch it, and then they go away for 3 years, and I don't have much interaction with them in middle school.
Yeah.
Just here and there, you see them around,
right?
And then all of a sudden, they're in 9th grade.
Yeah.
And then I get to see them again, and it's like they. Some of them are completely different humans. Other ones, you're like, that's exactly who I thought you were going to be.
So funny.
In every way.
Yeah.
So it's fun to see. The ministries are so different.
Right.
The conversations are different.
Yeah.
The teaching. I mean, similar passages, but the application is different. It's it's cool to do one remembering the other, but then to do the younger one thinking of what could be later. Like having that long range view of discipleship is really valuable. So it makes me more intentional with what I do with the younger ones.
Yeah,
because I can see like you don't understand this yet.
Right.
Remember it.
Because plant the little.
Because when you're there, you're gonna finally have a place to put this building block that I've handed you.
Totally.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, but there's a whole pile of girls, man. That freshman, sophomore class.
Yeah.
There's tons of them.
Okay.
So.
Yeah. Pray about it.
Just throwing it out there.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I love the youth. That's why I became a teacher,
Oh, that's true though.
Yeah.
Gosh, if you're spending all week with kids and
I know.
another
it's
evening.
Different, I think, because I do like 6th grade, It's different from them to like high school.
How much freedom do you have in the context of public school to like talk about faith or like where can you go with that?
None.
You have to be really careful.
Well, in California at least, and we live in the Bay Area, it's so hard. You have to be so careful.
Right.
Like the kids, like there is a difference between asking about religion versus asking about asking your religion. Yeah,
Right.
exactly. But my kids have asked me like I tell them like, oh, I go to church on Sunday, you know?
Yeah.
And they'll be like, oh, are you Christian? And I'll be like, yeah, I am, you know?
Okay.
But I think it's hard because I've heard stories, you know, parents getting upset
Yeah.
that you talk about God.
You're proselytizing.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you know, I did my master's project on religion in the public school system.
Oh, gosh.
And so we interviewed teachers,
Okay.
Christian teachers, some like other religions too, but mostly Christian. And a lot of them said that they didn't necessarily feel deeply discriminated against, but they didn't feel like they could be like missional necessarily.
Right.
But it was like kind of somewhere in the middle. Like they just felt like, yeah, like I can kind of be who I am, but I could never tell another kid that this is 100% the truth.
Yeah.
You know?
It kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
Really, if you think
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah.
In some ways.
Yeah. But I'm like, in my mind, it's like kind of black and white. It's like, oh my gosh, Jesus tells me, go and make disciples. Oh, I have all these little 30-something kids in my classroom every day.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? But it's hard. And I mean, the kids talk about their religion too. A lot of them are like Hindu.
Right.
Because I have mostly like Indian kids. And they like talk about going to their religious gatherings and whatnot.
And the Ramadan's probably a big deal.
You know, I've considered like having like a lunchtime where I just stay in my classroom and then the kids can come in and ask me about God and all that stuff.
AMA session?
Yeah, like I'm like, I wonder if I could even do that. But my principal is Christian, so I'm like, can I get in trouble?
Inside edge.
Yeah. But I don't know.
Yeah, that's tricky. You know,
it is.
what at a minimum, because what I think of is there's do you know the her name's I shouldn't even say her name. So this I just dodged a bullet right there.
Yes.
So this gal that we know, she went off to teach English actually in a Middle Eastern country that's very, very much not into Christianity.
Oh, yeah.
And the way she explained it was that people assume, they don't even have to say it, they assume if you're like an American person that you're a Christian.
Right.
So they don't really even have to say like I am this or I am that. But the fact that, okay, it's known that I am of this belief system.
Yeah.
She says people observe you. And they observe you consciously, but also they absorb who you are subconsciously.
Right.
So they see that you're, that people can see the fruits of the Spirit even if they don't understand the God that's producing them, right? So they can see love and joy and peace and patience, gentleness, goodness,
Right.
And that's going to be different, I think, than maybe there are other teachers or other people they know, and they're like, gosh, like this, she's, okay, so she's a Christian, and there's all these things that I really like. And yeah, whether you know it or not, like if you can just represent Christ well to these kids, that's as strong a testimony as you could ever give.
Totally.
Standing up and saying, Jesus is God, kids. Like that almost wouldn't work.
Right. Totally.
Yeah.
And to the parents too.
Yeah.
Because I think like this school, it's like pretty rigorous. So the kids are pretty high performing.
College prep in 6th grade.
Yeah, pretty much.
Right. Yeah. And
so I know like teachers can tend to be a little bit standoffish with parents. So I'm like, but I want to be like, exactly. I want to represent Christ well and like be kind and,
Just give them a little peek into the character of God through your own.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
So true. Yeah.
Making disciples.
Exactly.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Right on.
Cool.
So I have one more question for you.
Yes.
And then I'll let you like say anything to the world that you have left to say.
Yeah.
This is my favorite question I ask everybody.
Okay.
In all of your travels.
Oh, I don't travel that much.
In your 3 churches and relationships and what is it about Christ, the gospel itself that you have found so beautiful as to like commit yourself in the ways you are to want to know him and grow and be an apprentice and serve and actually like pursue a marriage that reflects the true marriage of the church. Like what is it that's so good about it that you'd be this crazy way that you are? The rest of the world thinks you're nuts.
Yeah.
Why are you so nuts?
I mean, the word that just comes to mind is just his kindness. Like, Jesus has just been so kind to me. And I think about the ways that I've sinned against him, like so many times in different ways at different ages, and currently, know, but like the Bible says, if I confess my sins, he is faithful and just to forgive me. Right. And I think that that's just so crazy, and like no one could ever love me like that. So yeah, just Jesus's kindness towards me, even though I've like rebelled and
we don't deserve it.
Yeah. Just don't deserve it.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, anything else on your mind you want the world to know about?
Hi, Mom. Just kidding.
Right on. Well, Katie, thank you so much for spending basically 2 hours now.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
Chatting with me about your life.
I told Matt, I was like, I'm not going to say anything interesting. It'll probably only be like an hour.
No, you're right on par.
Amazing.
Most people get there.
Okay.
No, that was great. Awesome.
Well, thanks so much for having me.
You know what? I can't wait to see what is next for, the two of you. I'm so glad that you have found like at least I don't want you to be comfortable, right?
Yes.
But that I want you to feel free to grow and to become who you're going to be and just to explore like what God has left to teach you and all these things.
Totally.
So I know that it's going to be as good as 2019 was. I'm just hoping you say that every year it just gets better. I think.
For sure.
This is awesome.
Cool.
Right on.
Yay.
Let's do a little high five out here.
Yeah.
Thank you. Here we go. All right.
Got him.
All right. And thank you, friends, for listening to this show. Thank you so much, Katie and Matt, for hanging out with me tonight. Haven't done an episode in a while, and it was great to get back in the saddle. What a cool story. What a great perspective. I just love hearing these stories, and I hope it resonated with you as you're listening there. As of course, again, support the show. Go on to patreon.com, search for The Great Stories Podcast. And you can follow the show on Facebook. Again, The Great Stories Podcast there. And you can find it on Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify. It's all over the place. Give it a thumbs up, share it, like it. You know the drill. Just want to keep this thing going. Stay tuned. I got a nice string of guests coming up that I think you're going to love this. Thanks so much for listening. See you next time. Oh, hi. You didn't turn your podcaster off, and you've discovered something, or maybe you're listening on purpose because you actually care what I have to say during these times. This is the Golden Nugget. This is the show after the show when I kind of just talk about whatever happens to be on my mind at any point in time. And what's honestly on my mind today, I guess this has turned into sort of an audio journal of sorts. But I don't mind sharing things that are real with lots of people. What's been on my mind lately is finding a balance in life. I don't know if you're anything like me, man. I live in the Bay Area. It's a fast-paced life. It's an expensive life, and just the pressures of just existing can sometimes start to weigh on you. And I work for the church. And I work there. I run the children's ministry, or the grade school ministry. And I do that. I'm in the church office there Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And then, of course, I'm at church on Sundays. We have 3 services. And so that's a long day. But the days that I'm not working at the church, I drive the semi truck, and so that's Monday, Friday, and Saturday. And if you have your calendar out inside your imagination, you've seen that every day has something on it. and I'm finding a struggle within myself for energy, for just good sleep, for rest, for recuperation. I don't have a Sabbath really scheduled. I try to take basically every other Monday mostly off to just kind of chill out and relax. But even then, if I'm around here, there's still errands to run, there's still things to do, and I don't feel super rested a lot of times even then. And so that's kind of what I'm working through right now, is trying to figure out this balance, because I know that I could go back to just working full time and not do the church and have weekends again and actually make more money and all that. But there's a call to ministry that I feel within myself, and I'm totally aware that ministry is not supposed to be comfortable. It's not supposed to be easy. You're going to experience discouragement and resistance, and you're a target of the enemy. Of course, he's going to use anything he can, including my own calendar, just to discourage my walk and my calling. And so I'm not under any illusions that it's supposed to be comfortable. The question is am I putting myself in this scenario righteously, or am I just kind of stubbornly persisting, ignoring some warning signs that I need to establish some balance, some margin? And I'm starting to think that's true. But the specifics of how that looks are always uncertain. You never know, like what needs to get off the plate. What should I be doing next? I love teaching kids the gospel. I love working in the church and for the church and following my calling. Like that's a part of who I am. I have to do that. But how can I set up the rest of my life to facilitate a Sabbath and some rest? And because I want to be able to do the things that I'm called to do long term. Nobody, I don't want to just burn hot and then burn out. So, I'm sharing this, here, just because I know, the folks listening to me, you're probably busy as hell too, right? And you're just going all over the place. You got 1,000 things up in the air, and we're just not really good at establishing that intentional rest and recuperation and balance and Sabbath, and we suck at that. So that's this season for me, is I'm trying to figure out and just take inventory on myself and figure out where I'm really at, and what do I need to be doing, what am I called to be doing, and what else am I doing in between, and honestly, this podcast is an additional thing, and I run a small group, and I show up to all the high school things, and so it's just a matter of balancing priorities. So we'll see. But what I do know is that I'm going to have a good handful of interviews coming up. I haven't done it in a while because I've just been busy, but I got a good lineup coming. I'm so glad Katie came in. That was fun. So we'll see what's next. But if you're of the mind to be praying for me over anything, I just pray for wisdom, that I would listen to God and take whatever steps faithfully He's got for me, with joy, whatever they are, that I'd just be willing to say yes to Him. And I hope the same for you. I've always found that life is better when I learn how to just say yes to Jesus. He knows what He's doing. My troubles are not a surprise to Him. Neither are yours. Thanks for listening. See ya.